Three kids at home, I'm used to it.
We'll get you ready for almost anything.
Oh yeah.
Hurry up. Coach is waiting on you.
Take space, stay away. Yeah.
No, still want my white shirt. Just grabbed what I had in the locker since we got practice today. No, I'm not slowing down.
Everybody good? Yep. Thanks, Jim.
We've had a couple good days of practice as we move forward for the Tech game. We'll work out today and get them back on Sunday. We'll let them have off on Saturday. So we've obviously finished up the last game. We're into game prep for Tech, and it'll be a different experience for us for a number of players. Conference game, defense. We'll see a wide open attack. Move much faster than what we've seen in the last few games. And offensively, obviously, we're about the same as we have been for a while. So, as I mentioned, practices are going very well at this time, and got a long ways to go, but the attitude's good and certainly getting a little bit better each day.
Coach, through non-conference play, did you have any questions about the team that's been answered so far, and anything that stood out to you?
Not really. Middle of October, we'll know a lot more about our team, kind of where we're at and how well they play together, and hopefully identify who we are on offense and see how the young guys play on defense. And need our key players to stay healthy and improve a little bit each week.
What's J.W. Walsh's status right now? And has he had a surgery? What's the latest with him?
He's out right now.
So just indefinitely is basically where you're at with it?
I don't, I've never figured out what that word means. Do you know what that means? If somebody could help me.
Nobody knows when he's coming back.
Right, neither do I. Because last time I thought he'd be out for the year and he came back a month earlier. So he's out for a few weeks for sure.
What's Vax giving you at quarterback?
Well, he throws the deep ball pretty well. His accuracy seems to be improving. He's very inexperienced. His demeanor in the last two games was good, not great. I think he gets a better feel for our offense every day, being out there with the first team. And just like all the rest of them, he should improve each week.
This before, but how difficult is it to do what he's done and not having played for 5 years, and then to come in and it doesn't seem like the game is too fast for him, and the big mistakes he's tended to avoid so far?
Well, I've never been through it, not seen many players that have gone through a timetable like Dax has, especially in college. So I'm guessing that he's adjusting on the run. He has had a lot of reps here in practice in scrimmage situations, but it's not the same as it is in a game. So it's unique. It's a little different, but he seems to be doing fine.
How's this team responded? You know, you had all the hype after the Florida State game. Now that you've had a couple of weeks since then, how has this team handled that, put it in its rearview mirror, so to speak, and gotten back to being focused? Did they do a good job of that in your mind?
They were better last week. The Missouri State week, I mentioned that I didn't think they had done a very good job. I had told them that, and that's the way we played. And so that one's far enough gone now that I think they have moved on, and especially going into league play. We all had a concern with Texas San Antonio, and that helped the team. And I think our coaches understood that that was a pretty good football team. And so they got over the newness of Florida State fairly quick based on the game they played against Missouri State.
How much more upside is there for your offensive line? The five you keep running out there. Are you going to have to figure out how to just win with what you have, or do you see the potential for them to be maybe a lot better in a month?
I don't know that they'll be a lot better. I think they can be a little better, but the guys out there playing are the ones that are going to play, and they're getting a little better. It's going to take a while for them to get to where the lines that we've played here in the last 3 or 4 years. They're not anywhere near being in the same capacity that those lines were.
Coach Gundy, what's the biggest plus in your mind about your football team? Week 4.
We have a lot of young players that have talent. They're just not sure which direction they're going right now. They seem like football's important to them. The focus has been good for the most part. I mentioned that in preseason it was great. Florida State obviously had something to do with that, if we were all guessing. And they've recovered a week ago, and then they've had good practices this week. This is a little bit different football team because of the players that are out there. We're going through a quarterback change again. So we're kind of trying to find our way through, and we need to be very simple and short each week and put the players in a position to play hard, and we'll know more about them each week after they play.
Is your game plan in for Texas Tech, and is it fairly simplified, or have you opened up the playbook some?
No, our game plan is complete, and we don't really have the luxury to open up the playbook. We have a quarterback that's only played 2 games in his career, and we have 3 young offensive linemen. And teams that we compete against know that. And they realize that they watch tape and they see the ability and the deficiencies we have in certain positions, and so they understand that, and they get the chance to an opportunity to coach, and so there's not really any reason to hide that. We're going to try to accomplish just a few things and get better at it each week.
Mike, one of the things you need to do you need to kind of rediscover Tyreek Hill? He doesn't seem to have been as big a factor the last couple of games as he was that first game.
Well, the punter and kicker he kicked the ball out of the end zone every time, and the punter hung the ball up so high that we couldn't get a return. And then one time when he did miss it, it hit 20 yards in front of him, and he never really got the ball. So he touched the ball in the first game, 5, 6, 7 times in the return game. And in the last game, their specialists were really good. And there was a chance for him to touch the ball some from an offensive standpoint. And those are the areas that we need to try to make sure that we get him his touches in a game. Because as I mentioned to you guys, when you're relying on special teams, you can't always say that he's going to get to touch the ball. So we need him to touch the ball. Some games will be more than others, but we'd certainly like to be at least 20 times a game.
How much different is the schedule preparing for a Thursday game instead of a Saturday game, and do you like to change up every once in a while?
I don't like any change. I'd rather play every Saturday and have one open week a year. But television and money dictate otherwise, and so we get on a plan set up for a Thursday game, and we start and work our way backwards like we would on a Saturday.
When you're playing against a team that has given up, certainly the last game gave up as many rushing yards as they did, how does that affect your game plan going forward?
Not really any, because Arkansas is a completely different system than what we have. And that's a kind of a broad answer for a lot of people that say, well, they just gave up 400 yards rushing. But Arkansas is going to play with 2 tight ends and a fullback, and I'm going to guess they practice those plays a lot. So it's a different scheme for us than what Arkansas plays with on a week-to-week basis.
JW out, how big of a role was it having Desmond back there from a leadership aspect back on the field for you?
Well, we need Dez in there for 2 reasons. One, he's experienced, as you mentioned, and 2, he pushes the pile and he moves downhill, and he did that for us some last year. We just weren't able to get him in space like we did last year because we don't block good enough right now. Hopefully by mid-season we'll block and get in front of some guys and move them out of there, and he can get a little bit more space and get up in there and make some cuts.
You really liked your defense last year that had all those seniors and all conference guys, but is this the most encouraged you've ever been by the defensive side of the program, in that so many of these guys, they're already playing fairly well, and so many of them are going to be playing 2 or 3 more years for you?
Well, a number of them. There was times in the Missouri State game when we had 9 freshmen on the field at once. And so that's encouraging because those players will be better at this time next year, just because they're a year older. That doesn't help us this week in the upcoming game, but we are encouraged by the youth and the direction that we're moving on that side of the football. You know, we made some adjustments about 3 years ago in our recruiting philosophy and the allocation and the distribution of scholarships on that side of the ball. And as I go back and take notes on what I do, I think it's working, and we'll find out in the next few years. But that's the direction that we wanted this program to move.
So just to be clear, you do expect JW back at some point this season?
He could very well come back at the end of the year. You know, he's going to be out long enough to not talk about it this time. But whether he comes back, they all recover different. And some guys have a little more threshold for pain, and the type of injury that he had, these foot injuries that players get, it's really hard to determine the length of the recovery.
Is there anything unique about Texas Tech, or what stands out as far as what they do?
Anything what?
Just unique or different as far as what they do?
It's the same as they've always been with him.
Mike, I don't know if you saw Tech let their defensive coordinator go. How does that affect game planning when there's a coordinator change?
Well, obviously nothing for us because we don't have any tape with him being a coordinator. So we can only go off the tape that we have and come up with a game plan, and there could be a 100 different rumors flying around about what they're going to do on defense, and that doesn't give us any direction. And so what we need to concern ourselves with is executing our offense and not necessarily worried about what they're doing. They're a little different this year defensively in that they're trying to play more man, in our opinion. They move around a lot, multiple coverages. So whoever's in charge now could say, I like that, let's coach them better in somebody's opinion, or I don't like what we're doing and this is why we made a change and this is the direction we're going to go. We have an open week. We have time to move a different direction. So our coaches will have to make that decision in the first quarter based on what they're going to try to run on defense, or they may just stay the same. But I doubt they're going to tell us.
Before you became a consistent contender in the conference, you had to figure out a way to beat Texas Tech. I guess that's a natural step yet. How do you, I don't know, this series kind of reflects the Mike Gundy program. You know what I mean? The growth of it, the development of it, where you struggled to win and love it, and then finally got over the hump, and then you take care of business pretty well.
I'm not sure. I just think that the years that we've had in it, and obviously 10 for me, and the continuity of the core system of what our team's all about, and we've changed out coordinators so much on both sides of the ball based on other guys getting head coaching jobs, but for the most part, our principles have stayed very consistent, and as I would think in any profession, any business, that the consistency of every day just staying the course has helped us. The lopsided scores that we've had with them, I can't explain that. I don't know. It's hard to come up with why that happens at times. But, you know, we just want to keep pushing forward with who we are and try to get the players that we think that are going to play the majority of the game in a position to play hard and have success. And the young kids that have now played, well, really 2 games, because the first game we didn't get to play any young players. For the most part, the veteran guys played. They'll be a little better in this game than they were in the last game. But it'll be game 6 or 7 before they really, if they come along, before they can impact a game and be in there for 15 or 20 plays. It's just difficult for them at this time. And you put them in and you're kind of holding your breath because they're susceptible to making a mistake. And we have to weigh our options there. And all those things kind of tie into what you're saying. So we have to just base our game plans and our team and on a consistency of who we've been for 10 years.
Have you ever been involved in a more insanely dramatic game than the one here 7 years ago?
Is that the one where Pettigrew caught the ball and ran down, and then that was a pretty good game if you're a season ticket holder and a fan, not for if you're a coach. But we've had some really unusual games with them, and at that time we started improving on offense, and we were a little wide open, and he had always been that way. And so it made for a very fan-friendly game to watch.
Years ago, Mike, it seemed natural that alums would come back perhaps or be sought to come back and coach their school. Not a lot of it nationally anymore, but yet this Thursday night we'll have two guys on the same field doing it. Any idea why maybe that has?
Well, I benefited from coaching or from playing here when we won a lot of football games, and whether we like it or not, in the profession we choose, people somewhat label you with wins. And he's been in the same situation. When he was there, they won a lot of football games. And he played for a guy that was arguably as good at his school in this league as any coach that's ever coached. If you just base it on where he started, what his history was, what his tradition is, what his location is, and what his opportunity is annually to have success. And he performed at a higher level, which with Mike, that's what he did. And Kingsbury was there when all that was going on, and I would guess that probably played a big role.
We talk a lot of times about the positives that go with passion, you want to be here, you understand the program. Are there unique challenges that come with coaching at your alma mater?
Sure. I mean, I'm sure it's different everywhere, but anytime you're at a place that you spend a lot of time, it takes a while for people to really see you as the boss, the guy in charge. And there's some pros and cons there, and it's like anything else. You have to earn that. When you get to a point where you earn it, then people realize that. Prior to that, it can be more difficult than going into another program and trying to set the tone.
Mike, you said after the last game that you were worried about some of your defensive guys playing a lot of snaps. Does this Thursday game help it at all that because they're not playing this Saturday? And with Big 12 starting now, is there a point you just want to say, hey, let's just see if we can continue to go with these guys because they're playing so well for you, they're doing some nice things?
You know, it's two great questions. I don't have an answer to either one, except we get 3 more days rest for the Tech game. So that should help our players. And well, they get the same 3 days. So that kind of, you can throw that out. As the season goes on, we haven't had as much success in the history here of playing 11 guys more than playing what would be around 20, because in the middle of October they're tired. It catches up to them. And especially this year because we started even a week earlier than what we normally did because we played Florida State. So these guys are into what would be the 4th week, but they're really into the 7th week of our program, which we would only be in the 3rd week now. If we were on a normal schedule, we would have not started practicing really hard until the 1st week in September. We would have been somewhat moderate from physicality and a rep standpoint, but we had to start in the 2nd week in August this year. So our young players are going to have to learn to play more, and our coaches are going to have to learn to trust them in order for us to make a run in the conference, in my opinion.
How long was it here before you felt like you were accepted or viewed as the head guy? You know what I mean? You said
It takes a while in some cases.
You know, the kind of the general consensus in our profession is whenever you get your 2nd contract, then they somewhat buy into you as being the head coach. Because the first one, well, for me, I didn't even read it or look at it. It's not like I had anything to barter with. I just signed it and didn't know anything about it. And then somebody has to trust you to give you another contract. Once you get another contract, then they at least have put a little faith into you from a financial standpoint. Some schools that may not matter. It does here at Oklahoma State.
So there are people around here who've been here a long time that would kind of look at you and go, I remember Gundy was running around here as 18-year-old.
Yeah, at Eskimo Joe's at 2 in the morning. I mean, they just see you at a different time. You know, I mean, and that's just the way it is. Guy that missed study hall, or a guy that was a player and have a perception of you as a player, and not as a coach. And so, there's a lot of things that work for a guy that's from his school, and then there's some things that work against him.
Is that where it helped maybe for you to get away for a little bit before you came back?
Yes, that I needed to get away for that reason. But what really helped me was Mike Holder. I mean, if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have got the job, period. He's the one that helped me. And sometimes you got to get that kind of break. And for whatever reason, he had enough faith in me to get the communication out there, to Harry Birdwell and anybody else that needed that information, and then the rest kind of took place from that point on.
Mike, you mentioned that Dax's demeanor was good but not great. What do you want to see more from him? I mean, in other words, when you're looking at his demeanor on the field, is it being more vocal, or what is it?
Well, and I probably may have gotten I may have given you the wrong impression there. He had 4 or 5 mistakes, mental errors, that we need him to try to minimize at his position. And there are plays that, mental plays that he could have and should have been able to accomplish in that game. And he knew it when he came off the field. And so he needs to know it before he comes off the field. He needs to know it while it's going on in the game. Those are the areas that he needs to improve in. Not necessarily his demeanor, but just the way he handles himself with all the mental aspect, because we're very, very simple, but there's still a lot of thought process that goes into his role in our offense.
So something like, say, if Tyreek was wide open and he's like a second or third option, are you talking about that more execution?
Not really. More of a play that we want to get in prior to the snap. He's been really good once the ball's been snapped. He's fired a couple out there that we weren't excited about, but he's also done a good job of getting to a third and a fourth receiver a few times. That very few people did that in this program other than Whedon, and that's because he was sitting back there. Green Bay Packers were protecting when he was here. He had like 5 seconds at a time, and he would get across the field, and Dax actually did that a couple times.
Coach, what does it say about this program that you can lose so much talent and then less than a month into the season you're in the top 25? What does it say about the program and the perception of it?
We've made strides, and it's been talked about a lot. I don't want to bore everybody with it, but Oklahoma State football is different than it was 6 years ago, and certainly different than 10 and 20 years ago, for a lot of reasons. The facilities, the money that's been poured into it, and then we've won games, and people and young men that we're recruiting. Everything we do here is to market to an 18-year-old student athlete, and there's a few things that are important to them, and one of them's winning. And when you win and you're in a national market, and I was driving down the road the other day, and a friend of mine was talking to me, and when you go to last year's season, if you take the bowl games out, 3 of the last college football weeks, based on our Baylor game and then Florida State, we're on national TV College Game Day 2 of the 3 times. And we've gotten to a point now where people recognize who we are, and so that's kind of working to our advantage, in my opinion, in what's important, which is marketing student athletes that can come here and do the things that we need them to do to help us improve and build this program.
Like by the end of September in '08, that team had accomplished a lot more than this team has. But yet you weren't in the poll yet, I guess, because people weren't conditioned to vote in Oklahoma State quite yet.
Well, that's right. And again, you're going back so far, y'all have a lot better memory than mine. But the difference is just what we talked about. And you can look across the country. We can say what we want, make each other feel good, but there's certain teams that start the season ranked really high, and they can play average and they stay pretty high. And there's certain teams that don't start the season ranked, and it takes them a while to work their way up because the voters have a perception based on the history and tradition of college football, period. If Tiger Woods comes out and tees it up, no matter what's going on, you have a hard time, not that I do, you'd have a hard time betting against him, still to this day. You just think, you know what, he may play good today, and if he does, he's probably going to play pretty good.
How much does it help Dax? He's gotten some starts on his belt. Now you get into your conference race, and I obviously thought you might play him, but now he's your guy for the foreseeable future.
Well, it certainly helps that he's played over 100 snaps and getting into the conference picture. And as I mentioned, he should get better every game, and he should gain some confidence. And I think our players, we've been very fortunate here and gone through somewhat of a carousel at the quarterback position over the last 3 years. And they've all kind of rallied around whoever that quarterback was. And as I mentioned before, when we went through the year where we had 3 of them playing, that can be an issue. Because if you have something internally going on and they don't rally as a group, then you're not going to be a very good team. And all those things seem to be working for him, and he's kind of got a grasp of the direction we're going, and we have confidence in him. I said this 2 weeks ago, and I'll say it again. I have a lot of confidence in his ability to have success.
You got spoiled when Robinson and Whedon started, 60 out of 61 games. Now you got the polar opposite of that.
Right. Kind of testing our boundaries a little bit, and spoiled is a good word for it. I mean, you get used to things being routine, and they became routine for us. And it's like having a running back that you know is going to be picked somewhere in the middle of the draft. When you have a guy like that for a number of years, you just get used to, if it's not blocked really good, he's still going to get yards. And Dez is developing into a guy now that if he continues to work hard and pushes and stays healthy, he's going to be in a camp. But he wasn't in that position last year. And he's now starting to develop, and it's up to him no matter what he puts into it. But you get used to having players like that, and then when you don't have them, you got to kind of rally back really quick. All of a sudden, you have to start coaching again.
Mike, you mentioned the Thursday night thing, your preference and how TV dictates a lot of stuff. Does your school have any impact on when that game is played or who's playing, or is it entirely the TV network and the conference?
Very minimal, in my opinion. Again, you can ask administration in the conference, but it's very minimal. They're going to dictate for the most part who plays when and where and what time in Thursday games and December 6th games and Thanksgiving games. And the networks are paying all the money. It's just like anything else. The money makes the decisions on everything that happens in sports, in my opinion. And so scheduling hasn't really affected us much. But the question was, do I like that? No, I'd rather stay on a Saturday routine throughout the year. Just makes it easier for us to set up recruiting calendars and do things that we have to do outside of the actual games.
Quick, what you said about it's rare how the locker room can rally around whatever quarterback you throw out there. Is that something you had to figure out a way to get them to do, your staff, or is it more of a reflection on the type of guys in the locker room? Did they do that themselves?
That has to do with just the values of our team and our program and the history that we have. That's not something, in my opinion, that can happen. It's like giving a great motivational speech to a team and making them go out there and play good. If they haven't prepared and they don't have substance to them way before that motivational talk that somebody thinks that they did to inspire them, they're probably not going to play very well, in my opinion. There has to be a lot more work done before that ever happens. If so, everybody would be in this business, and we'd all just say, hey, go out there and get them, and good luck to you. But it takes a lot, and I think that's one of the things that I'm pleased with, is that we can rally around whoever's in there up to this point.
A lot of people, this college football playoff, the whole conference versus conference, seems to be taking on an even bigger deal. When you watch tonight's Kansas State-Auburn game, and I mean, not that you're rooting, but they're a Big 12 school, you got to play Kansas State to beat them, makes you look good. I mean, do you get into all that, or?
We need Big 12. I want every Big 12 team to win every game that they play until they play us. I want Big 12 to win.
Have you always been that way, or is it just this year, or?
I think always. I'm just, I don't claim to be the smartest guy, but I would rather beat a team in our league that's 8-0 than it's 4-4, because we want to win our league games. And so we want the Big 12 to win every game possible until they get into our league play and they're playing against each other. I think that's good for our league and everything else in general, and I've always felt that way. Both my boys had practice tonight, so by the time I get to that game will be almost 9 o'clock. Unfortunately, after his practice, I'll coach him before we go home. Unfortunately for him. And he will let you. All you have to do is ask him, and he'll let you know. So.
With all the crap going on in football right now, in college and NFL levels, do you use that as a teaching tool?
Every day. Every day. We talk about it every day.
Stuff going on.
Have talked about that every day for a long time. Just because when you're the age that they're at, they don't think, none of us think very well most of the time, but when you're their age, you certainly don't think very well and make some mistakes. And there's just some things now that have become very popular that society is not going to forgive. We live in a country that loves to say, we'll give you a second chance if you just say you're sorry, but I think right now there's some things that aren't very popular, and it's frowned upon. And so we try to tell the players, because in the most part, the guys that we have here, and I can't speak for anybody else because I don't know them, but the guys we have here are good kids. Sometimes they make poor decisions. We'd like to try to warn them up front and stress to them the importance. And we have educated our team. I've had university legal counsel attorneys come in and educate our team just on Monday. Brought them in again, talked to them for 10 minutes about the ifs, and also make them aware of what's out there and the difference between due process in a criminal system and student conduct codes at a public university. That's really what it comes down to. They need to know that, because otherwise they really don't. So I really hate it for our game. I don't like it for sports in general, and so we try to do the best we can to educate our players and hold our breath.
So, I mean, you could hand them a brochure with a bunch of written words, or you can just remind them in the most plain terms, don't mistreat women. You do that?
Well, and again, of course, you brought up the female issue, and we use a really broad spectrum, and that's been a very popular subject right now. So we've made that very detailed. But the guys are just like that packet that she has right there on her lap. You guys, you just skim through it real quick, right? You don't really read all that information. Gavin and Kevin do a great job, but come on now, nobody reads all that stuff. Okay, so players are the same way. So we talk to them face to face and very seldom hand them anything. Used to do that and ended up as paper airplanes. Very, very well made paper airplanes. So good. Thanks, guys.